Hello, my name is Matt. Welcome to Unbearable 73. So it's time to review the Orville Season 3, Episode 4, Gently Falling Rain. Now, as you can see on screen here, I have my spoiler system. So this is going to be a heavy but not complete spoiler review. First, I'll give you my final thoughts on last week's episodes, but this time full spoilers so I can conclude those thoughts, so to speak. Then I'll make comments about any production issues or compliments for this particular episode. And finally, I'll do like heavy but not complete spoiler for the current episode, and this will repeat next week and so forth. Okay. So let's get on with it. So, following up to episode 3, and I mentioned last week that many people will miss the report that the fake Tala submitted upon entry into the Orville. In it, she mentioned that she picked up the residue of a Kaylon quantum drive in a particular sector. Fake Tala said that whatever they're doing out there is something big. I suspect the alien entity is letting them know something that they will otherwise not find out. And I'll bet my bottom dollar this is a plant for a future big storyline. Now, just looking forward to future episode titles, Episode 7 is called From an Unknown Grave, and Episode 10 is called Future Unknown. Either one could be an indicator of follow-up to the seed that this one has planted. Or it could be another episode, or I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure if that's the first thing you see in the episode that fake Tala, who we think is real Tala, drops a report into the system about the Kaylon, you can bet that's coming back. Especially since they didn't mention it again after that. They didn't have when real Kayla showed up and seen saying, well, she submitted a fake report. It was all full of garbage data or whatever. Trust me. Now, regarding the highly evolved aliens, I suspect this is not the last time we've seen them either. I've seen fans saying, well, this is going to be the Orville's version of the Q or something like that. Some people say it reminds them of the Tron people, I have no doubt, I'm sure we'll see them again, too. They reminded me a little bit of the first ones in Babylon 5, which I'll comment about here, I think, a little more. And by the way, I have no doubts. This episode is just as Lovecraftian as the second episode. The difference is the higher order aliens to humanity is basically bacteria, which is the Lovecraftian concept. And these aliens are not completely inimical to humanity, whereas the other ones from last week were. There's a group of aliens from the Whisperer in the Darkness called the Migo, and this is Lovecraft's work, who can extract human brains and put them in brain cylinders to basically record their experiences, and then put those brains back if they wanted to. That sounds familiar for this type of what happened in this episode. There's another group called the Great Race of Yeth from the Shadow Out of Time, the story. They can mentally traverse space and time, effortlessly taking over the consciousness of humans. Though they're not inimical to humans, they tend to leave the humans in no worse off than they find them. But then again, if they did, they wouldn't care because, again, we're bacteria to those aliens. Now, the aliens in this have elements of both species. So I'm beginning to wonder if McFarlane's doing something with Lovecraftian concepts on purpose, or he's planting seeds or something. Okay? The conclusion of the episode where the alien basically just ignores the complaints about being used, basically has simulators of death experiences, should be frightening to the viewer. Okay? The alien basically ignored the complaints with a smile, the same way a science might ignore a lab rat crying in pain when it gets a brief injection. I think I mentioned one of the last episodes about in Babylon 5, the first ones, for example, they come across as Lovecraftian to an extent, especially the shadows. Though there are specific Lovecraftian entities, and what are called the third space aliens. There was another show where had these sort of concepts. So I'm wondering if we're getting a little bit out of Babylon 5 concepts as for the Orville's longer story or something drawn from it. So on the production, now I've repeatedly said the space special effects are top notch. Okay, they're not only top notch from presentation, but in terms of they fit the plotting when they're shown. So the shuttle doesn't do extra loop-de-loops around the ship just to show up that they can do the special effect, how pretty it looks or whatever. So for 3 episodes, we've had on point both with the quality of the effect and the use of it. Today is the first example of an effect that is more for showing off than for actual plot, because it doesn't make sense in terms of the plot. I'm going to show you the scene. So this is when the Orville's arriving out of quantum drive space, whatever they call it, into Krill space. And it's a beautiful shot. I mean, excellent, flying towards the red sun of the Krill, And so far, so good. Nothing out of the ordinary here. And then all of a sudden, the 3 Krill warships show up, right? Now, if you look at the length of those ships, And we know the Orville has short-range space combat, right? Why are they doing that? Pointing. That's like the so-called. Remember that's bad joke with the Polish firing squad surrounding the shooter. Now this scene's okay, although it should be further away than close weapons range of the vessel. So that's a case where they're showing you special effects, right? But they kind of it's kind of like special effects induced stupidity. Like if they were flying an escort, they should be further away than weapons range because there's three of them. They can deal what they have to deal with. But also the Orville can hit all three of them in one fell swoop. That doesn't make good space tactics. And why am I bringing this up? Because the Orville has shown consistently through these 3 episodes and even in the previous seasons that their use of special effects to display space stuff fits their tactical setup with the range of their weapons and how they fight and all that. That scene did not quite fit. That was the first deviance from that sort of standard the Orville has established. Yeah. Not a killer, but it's worth pointing out. So so now that's the only really production issue I want to talk about. Okay, so back on to the plot. Now, I'm going to our spoiler friendly, but not spoiler 100% plot of part 4. Okay, so the premise of this episode is that the Krill and the Union are about to sign off on a permanent treaty. We formally set up the Krill Society as a sort of what one might want to call an allegory of the American society of the 1950s, where U.S. culture and religion somehow became an interstellar empire, basically. The Krill are in some respects very conservative, and others very libertarian. We see when Master Krill go-go dancers or strippers in public at one point. They have a culture that has embraced capitalism, but also embraced social and religious conservatism. Now, a lot of people like to use the terms capitalism and free market economics as synonyms, but they're not really the same thing. It might be best to think of free market economics as a form of capitalism, although, again, I would argue differently, so would others. But free market economics is a market system of free markets, no rules, so to speak, in itself, but limited by an exterior moral legal structure. So you can't sell people, for example, because it's immoral to do so. But once you factor out all the immoral things, what's left should be a free and fair market. That's kind of the simple down version of a free market system. That's not what the Krill have. Okay, the Krill is something a little different. Okay? They have capitalism basically restrained by religious morality. It sounds similar, but it's not. I don't want to turn this into an economic dissertation, other than to say that the Krill locked down freedom to an extent that you would have in a free market in a free market system, so to speak. Now, and realistically, though, in the setting established, if the Krill didn't have this sort of, I think I'd say it later, like a sort of like religious manifest destiny, aggressive manifest destiny, we'll have to like have the Krill overtake all of space, and if you're not a Krill, you don't have a soul and all that. If they didn't have that, they would, and within their own space, being the Krill, they'd be perfectly fine. I mean, in terms of political balance with the Union and all that. But obviously, since they're expansionists and consider other sapient beings as don't having souls, kind of a problem there. Now we also see the Krill world has no sunlight reaching the surface, and there was a red giant as we flew in. I don't know if you guys caught that. Well, I'll rewind it. We'll still watch that little scene again. We'll leave this little play. That's before that. Here it is. So this ship comes out of the hyper quantum. You see the red light on the ship is a highlight from a red giant star. Okay, that's one. So then that's big because a red giant star, which is bigger than our Earth, means the Krill planet was further away from their sun, so it was survived. Either it formed after it became a red giant, or it only developed life continuously after it became a red giant. So life there evolved as not needing the amount of sunlight that we get. Okay, now that has a lot of interesting scientific connotations, and I'm going to save that for another video. To think of what that might mean for life on a world. So did the Krill actually, are the Krill not actually from that world? Would be an interesting concept. Did they just emigrate there? Yeah. Now I'm going to go back to the beginning of the episode where we meet, we re-encounter Talea, who we last saw, if I remember correctly, in the season 2 episode, Nothing Left on Earth Excepting Fishes. Somewhere in the middle of the season, don't remember exactly. She's giving a speech opposing the current government and expressing a return to Krill conservative policy. Many of you out there are probably thinking this is some sort of shot across the political bow. I can't really comment fully on it in this particular show, but while Seth MacFarlane Live is on the left side of the spectrum, he's not radically left. This episode actually presents both societies pretty fairly. I mean, there's a shocker moment later which I can't talk about, otherwise it completely spoils certain things. But it's not what you think is. A certain penalty for something is not what you think it is. And Ed's reaction is in some ways as abhorrent as what the Krill's policy is. So we'll get to that next when we talk about the next episode. So Talea is giving that speech that's conservative. She's against the treaty with the Union, and she wants to make sure to get the Krill Society back on fact with their profit and so forth, and their religious law as dominating the society. Okay. So after that scene, then we go. If I remember the sequencing correctly, we wind up at a production of the play Annie on the Earth, and it's a interspecies cast putting on the play, which presumably will be meant as a sign of unity for the Union, showing the Krill that they're accepting of everyone, which is kind of the Krill philosophy that basically no one in that room besides the Krill have a soul. And here the reason I was showing you, bring this up in some out of order. I'm mentioning the Red Giant and Little Light getting to the Earth. We get to this scene here, okay? So they get, after the play, they go back to have some drinks and talk, and they're talking about the play. And the theme song of Annie, obviously, some will come out tomorrow, blah, 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 you all know it. And the Krill are interpreting that as an omen of ill fortune, because to them, the sun coming out is a bad sign, because they live in a world of darkness, which the sun getting through the atmosphere could potentially be dangerous to them. Their atmosphere is very dense and rigid, and basically, it's a night world. The only light that exists are what the Krill provide for the people. So, but even in that context, the Krill do discern that there was a prior crisis that the good times in the play are referring to in the past. They just interpret the end song as not talking about hope that you can get good times, but that they're in the good times and to be aware of the bad times that will eventually come again. Okay. Now, this is where we learn more about Union Earth, at the very least, where they've evolved into some sort of post-scarcity society, where they no longer base their lives or economy or whatever on, various mercantile facets, which is stupid, because there's going to be material transfer of goods for a cost, even if it's not money, it's energy that you have to that people have to do things to generate, or cause machines to be able to generate it. There's always you can't eliminate economics as long as there's more than one person and they're doing something together to survive. If you're by yourself, there's no economics. Two people make an economic system if they're interplaying to survive, trading goods or whatever, trading firewood, trading stories, whatever it is, So, so we learned quite a bit about quite a lot of things. Again, I could go on forever about this episode. It's in a lot of ways the best episode of the Orville ever, to me at least. So now we go to the treaty. So Corin and his people agree with the treaty. Well, Corin agrees with the treaty. He seems to have one guy who is really for hit, another guy who may be one of his more conservative advisors, who seems like he's on the more religious, the treaty's a bad idea, it's going to cost us, our people don't like it type of idea, right? But Corin wants the treaty. My impression that Corin is trying to is being portrayed as a politician, trying to balance being somewhat conservative, but also recognizing the Kalon threat and maybe some of the limitations of the Krill system, where inevitably they're going to fight a war with someone in their expansionistic policies that they will not be able to defeat. Okay, so and again, they're not saying here's the positive position. McFarlane does a great job. I know a lot of people are going to watch this episode and key off that their particular viewpoint is being attacked. Okay, I felt some of that because all the way the presentation was, all the way things have been in with a lot of shows, and them all getting rafed to death basically. So McFarlane, even though he personally has somewhat left of center positions, he is trying to give you and make you think by the way certain things happen in this episode. Okay, so you got to be aware, be alert to that. Okay? And good Star Trek is like that. Okay, so let's keep going here. So Korn wants to have the signing of the treaty back on his homeworld in his capital city on the day he's supposed to win the re-election, partially as a celebration, partially as a sign of saying, look, you elected me, I did what I promised, and I have the power. I've made this happen, And he goes, all the polls show that he's in the lead, okay? So now, of course, once you hear that the polls show him winning, we know he's not going to win. That's pretty obvious. Okay? So we go back to the planet, and everything's going on. Things start going bad right away. The election's a lot closer than they think, and now they're in a particular area, and the last two districts that he needed to win, he's losing. So the Council of Clerics called the election for Talela, and now at first when Korn rages, you think he's going to do some sort of like almost like he wants to start like a coup against the thing, and arguably that's what he might have been attempting to do. Though he does say there are means to appeal. But then again, if the Council of Clerics didn't listen and said Talea is the chief, then she's the chief. You know what I mean? She is the Supreme Chancellor. So immediately after that, though, Talea sends some I guess guard. I guess it's called the Guard to arrest him and the Orville and the Union delegation. He's arrested on treason. They're taking us prisoners, right? And he's dragged away protesting, right? So and then she nullifies the treaty. So the next day, Talea gives a celebratory speech at the end of which she personally executes Korn. Now, make no mistake about it, this scene was planted so that the audience understands that regardless of her motivations, she is a for real antagonist. I'll have more to say on this in the full spoiler section of episode 5, okay? Now, you might think the episode is almost over, right? But no. This episode is not even halfway over. This is probably the most densely packed episode of The Orville, and I'll say it again. I could probably talk about this episode for the next 3 hours and still not pull everything out of it. Okay? Like, I literally go line by line and have to go back over it again because there'll be stuff that you, individuals and stuff. Anyway. I haven't even mentioned the part of the story involving the Orville itself, right? So the Orville's in orbit when this all goes down. We have the usual confrontation where the Orville is ordered to surrender and be boarded. Now, this is the first episode. I've been docking the Orville like a whole point on a review for each episode because they keep having Grayson and Mercer both go to the planet or both go ashore. Until you know for sure, honestly, this is the one change in Star Trek The Next Generation that I really like, where Riker stopped Picard from constantly going to the planet, okay, or the other ship, until either it was safe or unless the captain absolutely had to go. And then Riker stayed on board. Okay, because one of those two officers should always be on the ship unless there's no other way to avoid it. Okay? And it shows with the other crew they put in command. None of them have been shown. And this is structural. This is on purpose by the writers. Like, they're showing that Mercer and Grayson are competent, elite level command officers, and the others, when they're in command, maybe not so good. Okay, not saying they're bad, but they're not at Mercer or Grayson's level. Right. So Grayson, basically they fight their way out of the solar system. Not going to belabor the point again and go on and on forever about all the awesome stuff in this episode. Okay, but she does order the execution of Directive 21. Now, we're not going to find out what Directive 21 is until near the end of the episode, and that's in the full spoiler chunk of the first thing, because I can't talk about it all, other than to say while it does get a lot of build up, and that's repeatedly during the episode, Grace keeps saying it's not ready. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to spoil what it was. I was a little disappointed in what it was for not so much because of the particulars of what it was, but how it was used, more or less. But I'll talk about that next week. Okay. So once you reach the border between the Union and Krill space, Admiral Perry says that he's sending all available ships to the border to form up a fleet. If Director Troy was not an option, they'll fight their way in, rescue the delegation, and fight their way out. So basically, they're at war with the Krill. Okay, and I can't say any more about this episode without. And there's like half of it to go. I mean, literally half of it to go without blowing the ending for you guys. The complex and well constructed ending, because again, this is a great episode. All the performances are top level. I thought okay. So I'll go. The humor was also very well placed. I'll say that. I laughed my butt off when Isaac walked in at the beginning of the episode. They were in the holographic. Were they in the holographic suite or whatever they call it on this show? Let me find I have my notes about this. It was pretty cool. TV notes. The Orville. Yeah, okay. So Isaac walks in. They're in a Western-themed simulation, right? And they're doing something called the pub crawl, where they go from like simulation to simulation in different eras just to get drunk, basically. And Isaac walks in to Cowboy and he goes, "This town will not tolerate the totality of our combined mass." I love that line in that moment. They've really mastered the use of decompressive and tone lightening humor at just the right points. There's a lot of little lines like that throughout the episode where a little bit of humor is thrown in just to stop stop the tone from going too dark and leveling it out and letting you rest before it goes dark again. So that's another good point. So again, there's so much in this episode. It's amazingly dense. I'm giving this one a 9.9 out of 10. I loved it. There's two moments that stop it from being 10 out of 10. And really, only one of them does. One moment that I mentioned way back at the beginning was that issue with the special effects that we used to show off and not directly, and then the plot was sort of suborned to the showing off. But that would have stopped from making 10 out of 10. It was really the thing that lost the point one was the stuff with Director 21, which I can't talk about, obviously. So again, 9.9 out of 10. This and the episode with the Mocklin urinary ceremony problem are two of my favorite episodes of this show. Okay, don't get me wrong. When I say the next bit, I'm rating this as a standalone episode. It's a 9.9 out of 10. However, I think this episode generates major problems for the long-term storyline. Suffice it to say, I think going back to the episode with the Krill, especially in the span of one episode, not building up to it over the course of 3 or 4 episodes, it might make some future storylines struggle. I really wish. I know McFarlane's trying to adhere to a very Star Trek-like, largely keep episodes contained and not have a meta storyline, but he might be worth using some subplots to develop parts of a meta story without being a full season-long meta storyline. But this is a great episode. Okay? Comment down below if you have any questions for me about this video or anything else you want to really share your thoughts. Share this video if you enjoyed it. Like if you like. Dislike if you dislike. Subscribe if you want to hear more from me. I really appreciate that. My name is Matt. This has been Unbearable 73. Have a nice day, and I am out of here.